In this story, a billionaire's world takes a shocking turn when an innocent girl accidentally walks into his private bathroom. What she sees leaves her speechless, but what happens next will change both of their lives forever. Stay with us till the end. This heart-melting tale is full of suspense, romance, and a powerful lesson for society. Natasha Harley's hands trembled slightly as she pushed open the tall glass doors of Coulter Enterprises, her new workplace. The glass was polished so clean it almost looked invisible, and for a brief second, she felt like she was stepping into another world, one far beyond anything she had ever imagined. The lobby stretched out before her like something from a dream. Marble floors gleamed beneath her feet, so shiny she could almost see her reflection. Crystal chandeliers glowed overhead, spilling soft light across golden pillars. Everything about this place screamed power, whispered wealth, and demanded respect. Her green eyes widened as she took it all in. She had worked in small offices before, places where the furniture wobbled and the coffee machine broke down every other day. But here she was surrounded by elegance and perfection. Every detail seemed carefully chosen, every corner radiated success. Her heart beat faster. She clutched her handbag to her chest like a lifeline. "Don't mess this up, Natasha," she told herself. "This job is your chance to prove yourself, to build a future." She tried to calm her racing nerves, but the thought of who ruled this empire made her hands grow clammy. Victor Coulter. The name alone carried weight. He wasn't just a CEO, he was a legend in the business world. 37 years old, already a billionaire, with a reputation as sharp and polished as the suits he wore. People whispered that he had built Coulter Enterprises with ruthless precision, that he didn't tolerate mistakes, and that he rarely let anyone close. Natasha swallowed hard. She had never even seen him in person, but the stories painted him as untouchable, like a king seated high above his kingdom. What if I run into him? What if I say something wrong? Her auburn hair, soft and loose, brushed against her shoulders as she tilted her chin up, forcing herself to be brave. She smoothed her navy blue blouse and straightened her skirt. She wanted to look professional, even if her heart was pounding so loud she was sure the receptionist could hear it. The receptionist smiled politely and pointed her toward the elevators. Natasha walked quickly, her heels clicking against the marble, echoing through the vast space. Each step felt heavier than the last, carrying not just her body, but the weight of her hopes and fears. When the elevator doors slid open, she stepped inside and pressed the button for the 12th floor. As the elevator ascended, her reflection in the mirrored wall stared back at her. She looked young, almost too young for such a powerful place. "Do I really belong here?" The doubt whispered through her mind. She shook her head. "I worked hard for this chance. I won't let fear take it away." The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing a hallway that was quieter, more intimidating than the bustling lobby below. The air itself felt different, cooler, sharper, filled with the weight of importance. Natasha walked carefully, holding the folder of documents she had been told to deliver. Her stomach twisted into knots. It was her first real task, simple enough, but somehow it felt like a test. She paused outside the office door she had been directed to, her hand hovering over the handle. Her pulse quickened. Behind doors like these, decisions worth millions, maybe billions, were made. And now, somehow, she was part of this world. She whispered to herself, "Just focus, Natasha. Don't make mistakes. You need this job." Her voice trembled, but saying the words out loud gave her courage. She turned the handle slowly, her breath catching in her throat. But destiny, unseen and waiting, was already moving its pieces into place. What Natasha didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was that by the end of this day, her life would never be the same again. The afternoon sun cast sharp beams across the polished marble floors as Natasha hurried through the hallway, clutching the urgent file against her chest like a lifeline. Her heels clicked rapidly, echoing in the silence of the executive floor. Each sound made her feel smaller, as though she were trespassing in a world meant only for the powerful. Her palms were damp with sweat. Don't drop the file, don't trip, just deliver it and leave. The executive floor was unnervingly quiet, as if the very walls held secrets worth billions. Sleek doors stood side by side, identical and intimidating, their golden handles gleaming beneath the overhead lights. Natasha's eyes darted from one door to the next, searching for the conference room she had been told to find. Her heartbeat picked up when she stopped before a door at the far end of the hallway. This must be it. Without pausing to double-check, she reached for the handle, twisting it carefully. The door opened with a soft creak. And then she froze. The hiss of rushing water filled her ears. A wave of steam drifted toward her, curling around her face like a ghostly veil. Her breath caught in her throat. Natasha blinked once, twice, and her world came crashing to a halt. There, framed in the mist, stood Victor Coulter, the billionaire, the untouchable CEO, the man whose name made entire boardrooms fall silent. He was standing beneath the rainfall shower, streams of water cascading over the hard lines of his chest, rolling down across muscles carved with precision. Droplets clung to his skin, glistening in the light, tracing paths over his sculpted frame. Natasha's heart stopped. Then it thundered so violently she thought it might burst out of her chest. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The file in her trembling hands nearly slipped, and she clutched it tighter, her knuckles whitening. And then he looked at her. Those piercing blue eyes snapped up, locking directly with hers through the steam. Eyes so cold, so commanding, yet suddenly alive with something she couldn't name. Time stood still. "Miss Harley," his voice rumbled, deep and dangerous like distant thunder. Even in the most vulnerable state a man could be found in, his tone carried authority. Natasha gasped. Her cheeks burned crimson. I'm so sorry," she stammered, her voice trembling. "I thought this was the meeting room. I didn't mean—" Her words tumbled out in a rush, breathless and broken. She clutched the folder like a shield over her chest, as though it could protect her from the burning heat flooding her body. Victor didn't flinch. He stood still, utterly composed despite the circumstance, his eyes never leaving hers. "You've made a mistake," he said slowly, deliberately, each word soaked in quiet power. The sound of his voice made her knees weaken. Natasha stumbled backward, nearly tripping over her own heels as she fumbled for the door handle. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Get out now!" With one final glance, one she would never forget, she fled, the door slamming softly behind her. She leaned against the wall outside, breathless, her chest heaving. Her skin felt hot, her heart wild. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to erase the image burned into her mind. But it was impossible. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the sight of him, his body, his eyes, the way he had looked at her as if seeing through her soul. It was a moment carved into her memory, one she knew she would never escape. And deep inside the steamy room, Victor Coulter stood frozen under the shower, his mind unsettled for the first time in years. He should have been furious. He should have dismissed it as nothing. Yet something about her, the innocence in her eyes, the unfiltered shock, the way she looked at him like he was human and not just a legend, stirred something he thought was long dead. For the first time in as long as he could remember, Victor Coulter was intrigued. And that intrigued him even more than the mistake itself. The following days at Coulter Enterprises were nothing short of torture for Natasha. Each morning, she walked into the building with her head held high, but inside, her nerves twisted into knots. She tried to convince herself that what happened in the shower had been nothing more than a mistake. A humiliating, unforgettable mistake. Yet every time she caught sight of Victor Coulter striding across the office, his tall figure commanding every inch of space, her cheeks flushed crimson. She avoided his gaze whenever possible, pretending to be engrossed in files or typing furiously at her computer. But she could feel him. His presence was magnetic, a force that drew her attention no matter how much she fought against it. Sometimes, when she walked past the glass-walled conference rooms, she caught him glancing at her. Not openly, not long enough for anyone else to notice, but she knew. Their eyes would meet for the briefest second, and her heart would stutter violently in her chest. Why does he keep looking at me? She wondered. Why won't he just forget? Victor, meanwhile, was a man at war with himself. He had spent years behind an armor of coldness, keeping his emotions hidden, his life impenetrable. But Natasha's accidental intrusion had left cracks in that armor. He told himself she was ordinary, just another employee. Yet he found his eyes following her across the office floor. He noticed her soft laughter when she helped a colleague. He noticed the way she spoke kindly to everyone, even the janitors, even the interns, people others ignored. And most dangerously of all, he noticed the way her innocence made him feel something he thought was long gone. One evening, the office lights dimmed as employees trickled out one by one. Natasha remained at her desk, a small cubicle tucked into a corner, her eyes fixed on the papers before her. She wanted to finish her work perfectly. If she couldn't erase the humiliation of the shower incident, she could at least prove she was competent, worthy of the job. She was so focused that she didn't hear the footsteps approaching. A deep voice broke the silence. "You work hard, Miss Harley." Natasha startled, nearly dropping her pen. Her head shot up, and there he was, Victor Coulter himself, leaning casually against the doorway of her cubicle. His suit jacket was undone, his tie loosened, making him look less like the untouchable CEO and more like a man stripped of his armor. Her pulse leapt. "Mr. Coulter," she stammered, her voice breathless. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, those piercing blue eyes, burned with something she couldn't quite name. Not anger, not irritation, something deeper. "I didn't mean to disturb you," he said, his voice smooth but weighted with intent. "I was observing." She blinked, her throat dry. "Observing?" "You work harder than most," Victor replied, his jaw tightening slightly. "I admire that." Her face warmed, and she quickly looked back at her papers, unable to meet his gaze for long. "Thank you, sir. I just want to do my best." For a moment, silence hung between them, thick and charged. Then Victor spoke again, slower this time. "About the other day." Natasha's pen slipped from her fingers, clattering against the desk. Her entire body froze. The other day. The shower. The mistake. Her lips parted, ready to stammer out another apology. But his next words stopped her. "You don't need to apologize again," he said firmly, his voice carrying something that almost sounded like gentleness. Perhaps it was fate. The word hung in the air like an electric current, wrapping around her heart. Her breath caught. Fate? Did he really just say that? She dared to glance up, meeting his eyes. For the first time, she saw something in Victor Coulter that the world never saw: vulnerability. Her heartbeat quickened. She couldn't find words, couldn't form a response. All she could do was stare, caught between disbelief and a pull she didn't understand. And in that moment, the walls between them trembled, because maybe, just maybe, fate had indeed played its hand. The evening of the company dinner arrived with all the glitter and grandeur one might expect of Victor Coulter's world. His private estate glowed like a palace, its sweeping gardens and tall windows bathed in soft golden light. Luxury cars lined the driveway, and laughter spilled into the night from the lavishly decorated halls. Inside, crystal glasses clinked, chandeliers sparkled, and elegant gowns shimmered beneath the glow. The most powerful executives and their partners filled the rooms, their conversations buzzing with money, deals, and connections. Natasha Harley stood among them, her hands nervously clutching the stem of a wine glass she hadn't touched. Her simple but tasteful dress felt painfully out of place beside the jeweled gowns and diamonds that flashed with every movement. She smiled politely, nodded when spoken to, but deep inside, she felt like an imposter. Her chest tightened. "I don't belong here. This isn't my world." Quietly, she slipped away from the crowd, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor as she pushed open a side door. Cool night air brushed her skin the moment she stepped into the garden. The estate's garden was breathtaking. Hedges trimmed into perfect lines, fountains glistening under the moonlight, roses in full bloom spreading their sweet fragrance into the night. She exhaled deeply, the air soothing her racing heart. Out here, she could breathe. Out here, she wasn't a lost girl among a sea of wealth. She was just Natasha. Do you always run away from crowded rooms? The voice, deep and familiar, made her spin around. Victor Coulter stood a few steps behind her, his black suit jacket open, his tie slightly loosened. He looked less like the untouchable CEO and more like a man who had escaped just as she had. Her lips parted, caught off guard. I just needed air, she admitted, biting her lip. I don't belong in there. Victor's gaze was steady, piercing but softer than she had ever seen. Slowly, he stepped closer, his shoes crunching lightly against the gravel path. Neither do I, Natasha. Her eyes widened. Neither does he? The honesty in his tone disarmed her. His voice didn't carry the weight of a CEO's command, but the quiet confession of a man tired of the crown he wore. For years, people had chased him for his name, his fortune, his empire. Not once had someone looked at him as though he were just human. But Natasha did, and that terrified and fascinated him all at once. They stood in silence for a moment, the moonlight bathing them in silver. Then, as though pulled by an invisible force, Victor spoke again, his words spilling more freely than he expected. I've built walls so high, he confessed, his eyes drifting to the stars above. Walls of steel, money, and power. People think I have everything, but what they don't see is how empty it feels, how lonely. Natasha's heart twisted. She had imagined him as a man untouched by pain, armored by his wealth. Yet here he was, unraveling before her, speaking words so raw they made her chest ache. I understand, she whispered. Her hands trembled, but her voice carried truth. Sometimes I feel like I don't fit anywhere, like I'm too ordinary to belong, too fragile to stand beside someone like you. Her words cut him deeper than she realized. He turned back to her, his gaze burning with something fierce and unspoken. Natasha, he said softly, stepping even closer, you're the first person who's ever made me feel seen. Her breath hitched. For a heartbeat, the world stilled. The laughter from the mansion faded, the clinking glasses, the music, everything dissolved until it was just the two of them, standing in the garden beneath the starlit sky. Victor's hand lifted, almost hesitantly, as though he feared she might step away. His fingers brushed a strand of her auburn hair from her face, lingering gently against her skin. The touch was soft, reverent, trembling with restraint. Natasha's heart raced so fast she could barely breathe. Her eyes fluttered shut, overwhelmed by the electricity pulsing between them. And then, slowly, irresistibly, the distance between them vanished. His lips found hers in a kiss that was not rushed, but deliberate, slow, and electrifying. It was a kiss that carried the weight of vulnerability, of longing, of two souls colliding against the odds. Her knees weakened, and her hands gripped his suit jacket for balance. He deepened the kiss, his touch firm but protective, as though he were claiming her and surrendering to her all at once. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, Natasha's eyes opened to meet his. The walls around them, their fears, their doubts, their differences, crumbled in that single moment. What had begun as a humiliating accident in a shower had now set both their hearts on fire, and neither of them could turn back. But reality soon intruded. Rumors began to swirl within the company. Some executives sneered behind closed doors, whispering that Natasha was just another gold digger. Victor's board warned him against scandal. Natasha, crushed by the poisonous whispers, tried to distance herself. Victor, your world. It's too much for me. I don't want to ruin your reputation. Victor's voice was firm, his eyes blazing. Natasha, You're the only thing in my world that feels real. I won't let anyone take that from me. Still, Natasha's insecurities gnawed at her. Could a billionaire CEO truly love her? A simple girl who had stumbled into his life by accident? Her doubts nearly tore them apart until fate tested them one last time. One afternoon, Natasha fainted from exhaustion at work. Victor, panicked, carried her in his arms, refusing to let anyone else touch her. In that moment, every mask dropped. The employees saw not a cold, unreachable CEO, but a man desperately in love. When Natasha awoke, she found him by her side, his eyes wet with unspoken fear. "Don't you dare leave me," he whispered. "From the moment you opened that wrong door, my life has never been the same. You're not my mistake, Natasha. You're my salvation." Her tears spilled as she wrapped her arms around him. For the first time, she believed him fully. From that day forward, Victor and Natasha faced the world hand in hand. The whispers and doubts faded because love spoke louder than judgment. And their story carried a lesson for all who watched. Love doesn't care about wealth, power, or mistakes. It only cares about the truth between two hearts. The wrong door had led them to the right forever.